The story begins deep in the Sahara Desert, where we meet Ajar, a young snake, and his best friend Pit, a hyperactive little scorpion. The two are trying to steal a watermelon from a group of traders caught in a sandstorm. Ajar accidentally knocks the watermelon down a dune, and just like that, the duo manages to steal it. Ajar is about to enjoy the fruit when Saladin, an adult snake from his colony, shows up. Saladin always bullied Ajar because Ajar had never shed his old skin, so Saladin kept calling him a kid. He even stings Pit unconscious with his tail. Ajar refuses to give up the watermelon, but Saladin knocks him out with a rock. When Ajar wakes up, he and Pit return to their colony, home to all the desert snakes known as the Dusties. But even here, Saladin doesn't stop. He and his buddies humiliate Ajar again by pelting him and Pit with watermelon seeds, making fun of Ajar for not shedding his skin yet. Fed up with all the bullying, Ajar and Pit climb up a tall cliff. Ajar decides he's done with this life. He wants to leave the desert and head to the lush oasis, a place filled with green, wealthy snakes. But Pit tries to stop him because no desert snake is ever allowed there. The border between the desert and the jungle is guarded by strict security birds. Just then they see something shocking, a green snake sneaking toward the desert. Before she can get far, a security bird swoops in and grabs her. Seeing this, Pit gets terrified, but Ajar is determined. He starts planning how to get past the guards. Meanwhile, we see the security bird deliver that green snake to the king snake of the oasis. Turns out, she isn't just any snake. She's Eva, the king's rebellious daughter. Tired of her sheltered life in the oasis, she keeps trying to escape into the desert. Her father warns her, "There's nothing out there. You won't survive the heat." But Eva doesn't care. Angry, she slithers away. Soon after, her brother Gary, a flashy, fashion-obsessed snake, shows up, in his own little world as always. Elsewhere, Eva begins playing with mud on the ground when she suddenly gets an idea. If she covers herself in mud and turns gray, the guards will mistake her for a desert snake and let her cross the border. At the same time, Ajar smears himself with green algae, so he looks like a jungle snake, hoping the guards won't stop him. When Ajar approaches the oasis, the security bird arrives, but can't recognize him. Thinking he's a green snake, the bird lets him pass. Ajar and Pit enter the oasis for the very first time, wide-eyed, amazed at the green paradise around them. There, Ajar meets Eva, who still looks like a dusty because of the mud. Ajar instantly falls for her, but before they can talk, a human farmer attacks them with his shovel. Running for their lives, Ajar and Eva end up near a river. The security bird arrives again, trying to capture Eva, still believing she's a desert snake. This time, Eva grabs Ajar and jumps straight into the river. But Ajar, being a desert snake, doesn't know how to swim. He starts drowning. Eva pulls him out and saves his life. The water washes off all the mud and algae, revealing their true identities to each other. Just then, Pit finally catches up with them. Eva looks at Ajar and asks, "Why do you even want to go into the jungle? It's boring in there. I just want to get out and see the whole world." She begins slithering forward, ready to continue her journey. She even asks Ajar to join her, but before they can go anywhere, a snake charmer appears out of nowhere and captures Eva in his basket. Ajar desperately tries to save her, but the leader of the security birds swoops down, captures Ajar and Pit, and drags them back to the other guards. All the security birds start bullying the two, until Eva's brother Gary shows up. Seeing Gary, Ajar gets clever. He grabs Gary and pretends to hold him hostage. Now terrified of hurting the prince of the oasis, the security birds are forced to obey Ajar. Ajar climbs onto one of the birds with Pit and Gary, and they take off, heading out to rescue Eva. Meanwhile, Eva is still trapped inside the charmer's basket. She meets several other snakes inside, snakes who are busy practicing dance routines. A snake named Pietra approaches Eva and invites her to join the belly dancing group. Eva refuses immediately. "I don't belong here. I came here by mistake, and I don't even know how to dance." The other snakes laugh at her. Eva then meets another green snake, George, who seems thrilled to see someone like him. But Eva? She feels miserable. Back to Ajar. He's flying over the desert with Pit and Gary when he spots the charmer's caravan moving across the sands. He urges the bird to fly faster. During the chase, Pit accidentally slips off the bird, but Ajar manages to save him with the bird's help. But things go wrong. Pit, in panic, stings the bird by mistake. The bird immediately falls into a deep sleep, crashed to the ground with him. Gary, who honestly doesn't care much about finding his sister, decides to stay with the sleeping bird so that he can fly back home once the bird wakes up. Ajar and Pit continue forward, but when Gary realizes the bird isn't waking up, he reluctantly joins them again. The trio wanders deeper into the desert, eventually getting lost inside a maze of rocky canyons, until suddenly, the ground collapses beneath them and they fall into a deep ravine. Meanwhile, back at the caravan, the charmer pulls some snakes out of the basket and forces them to dance to the music of his flute. Eva tries to use the moment to escape, but the charmer spots her. He hypnotizes her with the sound of his flute, forcing her to dance unwillingly. When she snaps out of the trance, Eva finds herself still trapped. Back underground, Ajar and the others are trying to climb out of the ravine. They stumble into a glowing cave filled with tiny bioluminescent insects. Ajar asks them for directions out of the cave, but it's a trap. The glowing creatures attack, spraying sticky goo everywhere. Gary and Pitt get stuck, unable to break free. Ajar struggles with everything he has and manages to push aside part of the cave rock, letting sunlight flood in. The glowing insects shriek and scurry back into their holes. They can't stand sunlight. Ajar saves his friends, and together they escape the cave. On the surface, all they can see is endless sand. But then they spot camel footprints, a sign of the caravan. They follow the tracks. Gary tries refusing again, whining non-stop, but when he sees Ajar and Pitt moving on without him, he has no choice but to follow. Meanwhile, Eva slowly begins enjoying dancing. She practices with George, but her heart is somewhere else. Every move she makes, she imagines herself dancing with Ajar. Ajar, Gary, and Pitt continue their exhausting journey across the desert. Gary struggles the most. He's never traveled through the harsh sands before. Every few steps feel like a nightmare for him. Along the way, they come across a couple enjoying a desert safari. Seeing a chance to hitch a ride, Ajar, Pitt, and Gary sneak into the back of their Jeep, but Gary spots a small flower pot inside the vehicle and can't resist slithering closer to admire it. The couple notices him immediately, and the driver grabs Gary in fear. Ajar springs into action. With quick thinking, he manages to free Gary from the driver's grip, and the three escape the Jeep, but Pitt accidentally gets left behind inside. Meanwhile, back at the Charmers camp, Eva continues practicing dance routines with George. But when she finds out that the snakes there have been trapped for 18 to 20 years, forced to practice dancing every day, she panics. She desperately wants to escape. Hearing this, Pietra approaches Eva. Jealous of Eva's fast-improving dance skills, Pietra decides to help her escape, just so she won't have competition anymore. With Pietra's help, Eva slips out of the cage, but the Charmer's camels spot her and try to stomp her. Their strange aggressive behavior alerts the Charmer, who realizes a snake is escaping. Pietra, watching Eva from outside, also gets noticed. The Charmer captures both Eva and Pietra again. Pietra trembles. She knows snakes caught escaping are usually skinned alive, but the Charmer smiles and says, "I've got something special planned for you two." Meanwhile, Ajar and Gary spot a tiny plant in the desert, something rare and precious. Overjoyed, they rush toward it, but when they reach it, the plant disappears. It wasn't a plant at all, just a desert chameleon trap, used to lure prey. Frustrated and exhausted, Ajar and Gary begin arguing, but soon they notice trees in the distance, an actual oasis. Gary, thrilled, jumps straight into the pond. Ajar tells him they need to keep going, but Gary insists he's too exhausted to crawl any farther, so Ajar agrees to rest there for the night. Back at the Charmer's camp, Eva and Pietra stand trapped inside a ring of fire. The Charmer starts playing his flute, announcing a deadly dance competition between the two snakes. Whoever stops dancing first will be killed, and their skin will be used to make a cover for his flute. Terrified, Eva and Pietra perform their best, deadliest dance moves. Eva raises her tail, flips onto her head, and spins with incredible balance. Pietra tries to copy the move, but fails. She collapses and loses. The Charmer grabs Pietra and drags her away, while Eva watches helplessly. Meanwhile, Pitt, still stuck with the tourist couple, hides inside the man's shoe. A family of wild scorpions arrives to steal food from the tourists. They find Pitt and invite him to join their group. Pitt agrees. He begins telling them exaggerated stories about his adventures with Ajar, stories of bravery, danger, near-death escapes. A female scorpion named Emily becomes totally impressed by him. The next morning, the scorpion group rides on top of the tourists' jeep, continuing their journey together. Back with Ajar, when he wakes up, he notices Gary is nowhere to be seen. He calls out for him and soon hears Gary's voice echoing from a well nearby. Gary urges Ajar to come down. Below the well is a flowing underground river that leads straight to the city, a shortcut to reach Eva faster, but Ajar freezes. "I can't swim," he says nervously. Before he can protest any further, a violent sandstorm hits. The wind knocks him off balance, and Ajar is forced to tumble into the well, straight into the water with Gary, beginning the next dangerous phase of their journey. Meanwhile, the snake charmer arrives in the city with Eva and all the other captured snakes. He locks away his magical flute inside a metal box and begins sharpening his knife, ready to skin Pietra as punishment for losing the dance competition. Pietra trembles in fear. Back in the underground water channel, Ajar is drowning, but when he spots the light shining from the well above, he forces himself upward, breaking through the surface. Gary climbs out right behind him. As they reach the top, they see something terrifying: a massive desert storm sweeping across the entire city. People quickly run inside their homes and lock their doors from the inside. Using the chaos to their advantage, Ajar and Gary sneak through the streets, searching for Eva. As they pass a windowsill with a flower pot, Gary once again feels tempted, but this time, he resists and follows Ajar. Cut to Eva, sitting sadly inside her cage, George tries to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, someday things will get better. You'll get used to living here." He wraps himself around her gently. Ajar and Gary finally reach the room, but when Ajar sees Eva hugging George, his heart sinks. He thinks she's moved on, that she doesn't need him anymore. Heartbroken, Ajar quietly turns to leave, but Gary stops him. "You came all this way to save my sister, and now you're walking away because someone else hugged her? Really?" Ajar takes a deep breath. Gary is right. He decides he's not giving up. The two climb up and hang from the ceiling fan above Eva's cage. Eva lights up with joy when she sees Ajar. Ajar's plan is simple: knock the fan loose and crash it on top of the cage, freeing Eva and all the snakes inside. But Gary loses his grip and falls, making a loud noise. The charmer rushes in, stunned to see Ajar hanging from the fan. Before the charmer can react, Ajar swings with all his strength, and the fan crashes down onto the cage, breaking it open. All the snakes escape. Eva races to Ajar, relieved and overjoyed. The charmer tries to grab his magical flute to recapture them, but Gary bites him in desperation. It has no effect. The charmer has so much venom in his system, he barely feels it. He flings Gary across the room. Seizing the moment, Ajar snatches the magical flute and slithers out into the storm outside. The furious charmer chases him through the raging winds. Ajar gets swept up into the air by the storm, flying uncontrollably across the rooftops. The charmer refuses to give up, climbing and leaping from building to building after him. Ajar loses his grip and ends up dangling from the dome of a mosque. The charmer climbs up and tries to pull him off, but ends up slipping himself. As the charmer falls, he grabs Ajar's skin, stretching it painfully, and then, for the first time in his life, Ajar sheds his old skin. The charmer plummets to the ground, clutching Ajar's shed skin, while the real Ajar falls too, crashing into wooden debris below. When the storm finally settles, Eva and Gary run to him. They find Ajar half buried under broken pieces of wood. Eva pushes away the planks and lifts his head. Ajar slowly opens his eyes. Eva bursts into tears of relief and kisses him, but suddenly, the charmer appears again. Before he can attack, Pitt charges in like a hero and stings the charmer, sending him into a deep, deep sleep. Pitt proudly introduces everyone to Emily, the female scorpion, who is now his wife. With the charmer defeated at last, everyone climbs onto a tourist jeep and rides out of the city together. Ajar finally has Eva. Pitt has Emily. Gary flirts shamelessly with Pietra. And just like that, the adventure ends with a warm, joyful, happily ever after. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment to subscribe, not for the algorithm, but so you never miss the next beautiful journey we share together.